In this video, I'm going to compare the OnePlus Nord N10 5G with the Samsung A32 5G. Let's go ahead and take a look. Both of these phones share a common bond, is that both of these phones are very low entry price points for 5G phones. If you want to get a cheap way to get into a 5G phone, these are it. They both come under $300 unlocked, and if you get them on prepaid, you can get these phones as low as $30. So these are very, very accessible to a lot of people. These devices make 5G go mainstream and put 5G phones in more people's hands. But which one of these is a better fit for you, and which features do each of these phones offer? For the size, these devices are very similar. They're around 6.4 inches tall, 3 inches wide, 0.36 inches in thickness. So those are very typical sizes for these phones. Not too big, not too small. They seem just about right. They both offer the same type of build quality. At a sub $300 price point, both of these devices will be a plasticky feeling. There's no glass on the back. It doesn't have anything that makes it feel premium, but for under $300, it's a given. Out of these two, I would say that probably the OnePlus phone probably gives it a little bit more build quality, even though they're both plastic. The Samsung has that very super plasticky, clicky clacky, plasticky feel shell, which is very common among Samsung phones. So I would give the slight edge in build quality to the OnePlus. For the weight, they do different weight. The N10 5G is 6.7 ounces, which is less than the Samsung A32. That one comes in at 7.23 ounces. So if you're looking for a more lightweight device, the OnePlus has you covered. Now, the difference between a low, mid, and flagship device is usually hidden in the screen and the display. The OnePlus phone has a 1080p 6.5-inch IPS LCD display. The Samsung has a 720p screen, 6.5 inches TFT display. When you break that down, you have a 406 ppi on the OnePlus, 270 ppi density on the Samsung. So if you were to hold these phones together, you would see that the N10 5G's 1080p display is just a better display overall compared to the Samsung. That 720p is very low on the smartphone scale when it comes to screen quality. I mean, it's perfectly usable and it's perfectly acceptable, but 1080p just is gonna be better. The screen to body ratio is also better on the OnePlus. It's 83% versus 81% on the Samsung. A little bonus on the OnePlus, at this price point, it's got a 90 hertz refresh rate, which basically means you got a smoother scrolling, just a smoother display when you move it up and down. So the overall better display experience is going to be the OnePlus. When it comes to the operating system, both of these are going to run Android. You have Android 10 on the OnePlus, Android 11 on the A32. You're getting Oxygen OS skin on the OnePlus N10 5G, and you have Samsung One UI 3.0 on the Galaxy A32. So you're getting the same operating system basically, different versions, but you're getting a more stock Android feeling, pixel feeling device on the OnePlus software versus the one-of-a-kind Samsung One UI skin on top, which is very customizable. It has its own look and feel, which is a lot of people like, including me. It seems pretty okay. But I also like the stock version as well, and that's what you're getting on the OnePlus. When it comes to updates, both of these devices will not get many updates. They'll probably get 1 or 2 depending on Samsung, if they keep their promises, trying to have at least 3 years of updates. The OnePlus is probably just going to get 1 update in general. But it's not too much of a big deal at getting these devices for anywhere from $30 to less than $300. It's expected. Most of the apps in the App Store, if not all of them, will still run after a few years on these respected versions of Android. For the chipset, the OnePlus is rocking a Qualcomm Snapdragon 690 processor. The Samsung A32 is a MediaTek 720 5G processor. So both of these processors will deliver what you need for day-to-day activities, running most apps with no problems. Except that if I had to pick between these two, I'd say that the Qualcomm is more powerful than the MediaTek. Qualcomm is more established in the market, and MediaTek is the up-and-coming, but usually found in lower-end phones. And there's no exception here. But don't get me wrong, again, most of the apps, 99% of apps and activities you'll be fine on both of these devices. The one place where I think a lot of chipsets fail, if they're underpowered, is going to be video editing. If you plan on doing any type of video editing or high-end gaming, that's probably where you're gonna find faults in the processor. But for every other app out there and every other activity, you'll be just fine on both of these phones. Next, let's move on to storage. You're going to get 128 gigs of internal storage on the OnePlus, while the base storage on the A32 is 64 gigs. I honestly think 64 gigs is enough for most people, but if you're paying the same amount of money, I'd rather get the 128 gigs of storage. Luckily, both of these phones offer micro SD card expansion, so it's kind of doesn't matter at that point. If you do need any type of extra storage, both of these phones will give you that option. For the RAM, the OnePlus is giving you 6 gigs of RAM, and the Samsung is giving you 4 gigs of RAM on the base model. Both of these amounts of RAM are fine. 4 gigs of RAM is fine for most people in their day-to-day activities, although obviously I'll select 6 gigs of RAM happily if it's the same price. Pair that with the processor, most day-to-day activities and running apps in the background should not be a problem for most people. Moving on to the camera setup, the OnePlus has 4 cameras on the back: 64 megapixel, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 2 megapixel depth, 2 megapixel macro. The A32 Samsung also has 4 camera setup: 48 megapixel main camera, 8 megapixel ultra wide, 5 megapixel macro, 2 megapixel depth. Now, I'll be totally honest with you. You should only worry about the main camera and the ultra wide camera. I believe those will be the 2 most used cameras on the back of the phone. The depth and the macro cameras are gimmicks in my opinion. You shouldn't really worry about them because you'll probably never really use them. The reason I say that the ultra wide is important is because how much of a subject will fit into that camera. Well, you get on the OnePlus, you got 119 degree ultra wide, but the Samsung ultra wide camera has 123 degree wide angle camera. So if you had to use these phones, the ultra wide camera is better on the Samsung. You're gonna get more of your subject in there, or more of your friends, or whatever it is in there, you're gonna get more of it in the shot. Although both of these main cameras are a lot in megapixels, I believe both of these cameras on these phones you'll be satisfied with them. They are not flagships by any means. If you're outside or in a bright, you have enough light in the room or whatever, you'll take some very awesome shots. You'll be happy to share them with your friends and family, or uploading them to the cloud, or uploading them to social media. Don't worry too much about the megapixels. If you're like me, you're not a perfect photographer. That's not your forte, but you should be able to take great videos and pictures on these cameras. Speaking of video, both of these phones offer 4K video resolution. So that's pretty good right there. At under $300, 4K on these phones is pretty nice. For the selfie camera, the OnePlus has a 16 megapixel shooter. The Samsung has a 13 megapixel shooter, and they both shoot video in 1080p. Now, both of those cameras on these phones are very typical at the low-end price point. 1080p is pretty standard on a low-end price phone. 4K is usually reserved for more expensive devices, but regardless, you should be happy with the results on both of these selfie cameras. Both phones offer a nice bonus of having that headphone jack, so you can plug in your physical headphones, your mic, and your aux cord to listen to music in your car, for example. So that's pretty handy right there. And if you fully embrace wireless like me and use wireless accessories, you got Bluetooth 5.1 on the OnePlus, you got Bluetooth 5.0 on the Samsung. Both of these versions of Bluetooth will connect easily to your wireless headphones, your smart wearables such as your smartwatch, your smart band, and your smart speakers and stuff like that, no problem. One bonus on the OnePlus is that it has NFC, which is mainly used for payment systems, and you get NFC on the Samsung, but it depends on your market. For the security and unlocking of these devices, you both get fingerprint readers. You get a rear-mounted one on the OnePlus, and you have a side-mounted one on the Samsung. Both are reliable ways to open up your device. I really do not have a preference on these, although the side-mounted way of unlocking your phone will avoid you having to lift up your phone off of a table. So that's a little bonus right there. For the battery life, we have a 4300 milliamp battery on the OnePlus, which is smaller than the 5000 milliamp battery on the Samsung. Now, both of these batteries are big enough for most of the day, but I'm gonna have to roll with the 5000 milliamp battery, obviously, on the Samsung, because these are 5G phones, and if you decide to have 5G on most of the day, that every little bit of the battery helps. And 5000 milliamps is very impressive, especially with the lower resolution screen and lower end processor. That's gonna extend the battery life super greatly on the Samsung. The OnePlus probably will not last all day for most people, if you're especially on 5G, but the bonuses on the OnePlus is that you get fast charging at 30 watts, which will charge faster than the 15-watt fast charging on the Samsung. So in conclusion, which is the better phone? Well, overall, with all the features, I'm going to have to roll with the OnePlus N10 5G. And let me tell you why. Well, it has a better display. It has that 90 hertz refresh rate. It has that fast charging. I really like the stock version of Android. It weighs less than the Samsung, and it just has a little bit more premium feel than the Samsung. It has that better processor, and it has that double the internal storage of the Samsung as well. There are some pluses for the Samsung device though. A lot of people do like Samsung software, and it's way better than it was a few years ago. There's certain things that just, feel a little bit better for some people with Samsungs. They're used to it. This is the same type of software that's used on high-end Samsung devices. So this device will make you feel right at home with, having a lower price device, but it feels like you have a flagship in your hand. You also have that nice and wide 123 field of view on the ultra wide camera on the Samsung. So if you take a lot of videos and you want to take a lot in your shot, then the Samsung will be better at that. But there's just too many negatives on the Samsung. Well, I wouldn't call them negatives, but there's just a lot more pluses on the OnePlus, no pun intended. So if you're gonna spend your money, I would roll with for most people is the OnePlus, unless you really care about that super big battery on the Samsung or that ultra wide camera and you really don't care about internal storage. Thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.